raise your hand or just speak out any questions you might have. Yeah, just to start off, I'm Jonathan Nelson, landscape architect with Bolton & Mink. Slow background for some folks I haven't met yet. I work in our Burnsville office in the Twin Cities. I've been working with the city of Wabasha for a number of years now. Past experience here includes the downtown streetscape plan, the National Eagle Center, open space, and then some previous park planning work as far as the athletic field relocation project. So, and now the Parks and Trails Master Plan. So excited to see this kind of wrapping up, and excited for the product that we put together here. Hopefully other folks are as well. And then just wanted to give a thanks to the city, to the park board, to the steering committee members and the public who's kind of provided some feedback and helped guide this process. I mean, the plan's really only as successful as, you know, the input that we get from you all. So we appreciate all the work you've done as well. So a little project background before I get into the plan. Just wanted to give some insights into some of the work that happened prior to this plan that we really kind of used to help guide this plan as well, in addition to the feedback from everybody. So 2016, the comprehensive plan was completed, kind of guiding the future of the community, and that included some recommendations related to parks and trails. At that time as well, a public survey was completed in relation to parks and trails. And so we kind of use that data just as a support measure to kind of reinforce some of the information that we've gathered more recently here. In 2019, the city did a system-wide ADA compliance review for the park system. So they looked at things like restroom facilities, playgrounds, and accessibility related to those, sidewalks, trails, looking for deficiencies there. So we looked at that document as well to kind of identify some of those deficiencies related to ADA. Safe routes to school survey. So in 2021, there was a safe routes to school survey that was completed, looking at, you know, really just getting information from families of students and the community in terms of, you know, safety and security of students as they're trying to make their way to school, and looking at opportunities to strengthen the trail system and pedestrian connectivity. And then lastly, an additional park and trail was completed. Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure if I can, well, let's see if it continues. Yeah, so 2021 and another parks and trails survey was completed by a community. I believe there was over 250 responses to this survey, so a pretty good amount of data that was collected, looking at people's priorities for improvements within the park and trail system. So looking at the process we went through as part of this plan, so it's really kind of like a 5-step process, but kind of unique in that, you know, these steps aren't really linear in form. They kind of, it's kind of circular in a sense, in that, you know, there's a lot of public outreach that happens throughout the process. There's a lot of information gathering, but generally we kind of followed 5 steps. First was the information gathering. So a lot of that was done by the city. Looking at, you know, what is the existing park and trail system? What's out there? You know, what sort of playground equipment, amenities are available at the parks and their condition. So we kind of used that information. We added to that. We did an updated review of that information just to make sure that we had a good baseline for moving forward with the plan. Public outreach. So we did have the steering committee. We had that information from the public surveys. And then we also kind of looked at other opportunities with the pop-up event at Septoberfest to kind of help get feedback on some of these recommendations. Analysis. So this is where we kind of looked at, we did a level of service analysis, we call it, for a few amenities, looking at, you know, where in the community are people underserved as far as playgrounds, just neighborhood parks in general, to get a sense of, you know, where there might be opportunities for adding amenities in the future to help kind of balance that overall park service. We also looked at things like flooding, looking at the floodplains and where parks lie in the floodplains, to help kind of steer our recommendations, making sure we're not putting, high dollar amenities in those areas that are prone to flooding. And then we looked at national park and rec standards, and how Wabasha compares to, those national levels. And that kind of helps give us a sense of where some of the deficiencies might be in Wabasha compared to other communities of similar sizes around the country. And then from there, we kind of moved into improvements and recommendations. So we looked at working with the city, and based off the feedback we got, we looked at system-wide recommendations. We looked at park-specific recommendations, trail system recommendations, and then what we're calling opportunity-driven recommendations that are really things kind of beyond the scope of this project, but and may depend on some outside funding opportunities to develop. And then lastly, review and wrap up, which is kind of what we're doing here, presenting the plan to this group, just to make sure that, we're kind of covering everything that folks feel is necessary. And from there, we'll take it, we'll make some minor modifications and then present it to council for adoption. And then the purpose of the plan, really, the purpose of the plan is to provide a framework for the city to kind of enhance their existing parks and trail system and identify future expansion and enhancement opportunities based on the community's current and future needs. So as I mentioned, one of the first steps was kind of an inventory of the existing park system. So these are just some figures, kind of standard figures that we developed. So we developed these for each park. We have a map that kind of shows where the existing amenities are within each park, and then a chart that kind of identifies what those amenities are, the park size, what utilities might be present on site, things like that, including some history on each specific park. And then we kind of tabulated all that information into an overall chart that identifies the number of the various types of facilities that the city currently has. As I mentioned, we kind of did a level of service analysis for a few amenities. So this one specifically looks at just neighborhood and community parks in general. And so what this is showing is the orange circles are a 1/4 mile walking radius. The purple circles are a 1/2 mile walking radius, which is about 5 to 10 minute walks, respectively. And that's generally the distance that folks are willing to walk to access some of these amenities. And so what we're looking for with this analysis is, are there areas within the community that don't currently have service area covered? So these are folks who might have to drive to access a park. And so really the outlying area within this analysis is kind of on that southeast corner of the community, Long River Drive South, where we see a little bit of a deficiency there in terms of park service area. And then similarly, looking at playgrounds, that service area kind of grows. It encompasses Eagle Basin down there, as well as kind of a larger area south of the majority of the community there. And this is an area that's really targeted for future growth and development. So we want to make sure that as that development occurs, we're taking that into consideration and planning for additional park amenities in this area. As I mentioned, we looked at flood resiliency as part of this. So this is just a map from the DNR, kind of identifying the 100 and 500-year floodplains within Wabasha. So 100-year floodplain in the green, you can see a large majority of the parks within Wabasha kind of fall into that 100-year floodplain. So that's something that we wanted to take into account when we're looking at recommendations improvements as part of this plan. Just making, there are criteria for what sorts of improvements you can do within that floodplain, and we just want to make sure that the money that's being invested is not in vain, and it's not something that's going to be destroyed by flooding in the future. And as I mentioned, we looked at the national trends, national statistics as far as parks. These are a few that I pulled out just for reference. So looking at trails, for example. So the way that the National Parks and Rec Association breaks it down is they look at generally a cohort of communities less than 20,000. So Wabasha falls into that. We look at, what's the median amount of miles of trail per population, which is about 3 miles for those communities. And Wabasha is right at 3.1 miles. So really close to the average. So just something to keep in mind as we're making these trail recommendations. We want to make sure that we're not going too far beyond that. So looking for small improvements, small connections that we can make without overburdening the city in terms of maintenance. Looking at parks, so park acres per 1,000 residents. The median is about 13 acres. 13 acres of parkland for 1,000 residents. Wabasha is at 16.2 currently. So that's something to take into consideration. One thing to note with this calculation is that this takes into account the current athletic park, which is quite a bit larger than the planned relocation of the athletic park. So looking towards the future, that number is going to shift a little bit. The total acreages of park within the community will go down a little bit. So something to keep in mind, we are recommending additional amenities and potentially an additional neighborhood park, but that's still going to bring the total down a little bit. And then on the right here, we look at facilities per population. So this is kind of taking that data that we aggregated throughout the community as far as the number of facilities and looking at how those compare to similar sized communities in terms of number of those amenities. And there's a few here: tennis court, let's see, baseball fields, things like that, and pickleball courts that will be accommodated in the future athletic park relocation. So those will kind of help to get you into line with some of those. But a few other things, dog park is one that the city that doesn't currently have, that has been explored a little bit as part of this process as well. So as I mentioned, in 2021, there was a public survey completed as looking at the parks and trail system. About 250 responses were received from that survey. And this kind of gives you a highlight of the number of the top kind of priorities from those responses. So looking at what people want within the community, the top responses were bike and walking trails, dog park, and tennis court, pickleball courts, so kind of those sport courts. And then what needs to improve, the big takeaways from that were playgrounds, playground equipment, restroom facilities, and then looking at the docks and those amenities related to the docks. These are a few images from the Septoberfest pop-up event. So at this event, we had project materials from 4 current planning projects going on within the city of Wabasha. So we had the athletic park relocation, we had the Parks and Trails master plan, we had the downtown streetscape, and then we had the Wabasha to Kellogg Trail projects on display there. We had folks talking to community members, getting feedback, and we had people kind of vote on what their top priorities were in terms of this Parks and Trails master plan project. So it was a great event. I know that it sounded like over 100 people, stopped by to talk about things and provide input. So it was a well-attended event, potentially something that could be continue to happen in the future as kind of an annual thing, just to keep people up to speed on, those projects that are currently ongoing. So getting into the recommendations of the plan, as I mentioned earlier, there's kind of 4 categories of improvements that we looked at. We have the park system-wide recommendations. Those are going to be larger overarching goals for the whole system. Location-specific park recommendations focused on each individual park. Trails, system, and pedestrian safety recommendations. And then lastly, that category of kind of opportunity-driven recommendations. So within the system-wide, the park system-wide recommendations, we had kind of 4 major recommendations identified. The first being to increase distribution of amenities throughout the community, providing more equitable access to everyone within the community, so folks don't, like I mentioned, have to get in their cars and drive to some of these facilities. Increased diversity of amenities within the community, improved accessibility and ADA compliance, and then looking at enhancing and expanding the city's recreational trail system. So looking at that first one, increased distribution of amenities throughout the community. The first one, looking at when we looked at those level of service analysis, we saw that area that was a little deficient in terms of service. So looking at providing an additional future neighborhood park within that service area. This would help to fill that gap in the service area. It's actually, this land is slated for to be a neighborhood park as part of this development. And so the thought is that this is really a long-term goal for this neighborhood park development. You know, the city will have the property, but it'll probably be a few years before any sort of amenities are added to this property. The second one, addition of a playground at Eagle Basin Park. So that's right across Hiawatha, a little farther down. That's going to provide, that's going to help fill that service area as far as in the short term in terms of playground. The addition of a basketball court at Brugger Park. And then lastly, the relocation of the athletic park. Like I mentioned, that's going to kind of bring a lot of those amenities centrally located within the community. The second recommendation is increased diversity of amenities. So in looking more specifically at individual parks, looking at opportunities to add some amenities that the city doesn't currently have. One of the top ones in terms of people's interest was an inclusive all abilities playground. And that's kind of been identified for Schmidt Park as a future opportunity for that project. A dog park. So a few locations have been identified for potential dog park, including that future neighborhood park that I just showed along River Drive South, as well as Marcoux Park. Mountain biking and hiking trails in the bluffs. This was something that people commented on. The city doesn't currently own any land over there. So this would be one of those opportunity driven projects that I'll mention again later. But people did express interest in kind of those off-road trails that the city currently has limited number of. And then lastly, campground at Marcoux Park. So, you know, the city has the campground at Beach Park currently, sees a lot of demand for that. More users are requesting campsites. And so this would be an opportunity to provide additional campgrounds and potentially as a raise some revenue for the city as well. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned 2 places possibly for dog parks.
Yes.
And are those like only 2 places?
Yeah, so we looked at a few locations. Those are kind of the 2 that seem to make the most sense in terms of available area. So yeah, that's kind of where it's centered. If folks have recommendations or thoughts on other locations, we certainly want to hear that and make sure that that's included in the plan. We didn't make a specific recommendation as far as the dog park because we thought it warranted a little bit more discussion with the city and residents before we kind of identify exactly where that amenity might go. Yeah, so it was Marcoux Park down along 12th Street and then the future neighborhood park out along River Drive South.
Because the city will own some of that.
Yes.
Currently farm.
It's yeah, so right along River Drive South, kind of south of the existing homes. There's a plat that was submitted to develop some new homes along there. And as part of that development, they'll be dedicating some land to the city.
Oh,
yeah.
So Fitzgerald are dedicating some of their land now, part that's in existence on River Drive South that we maintain.
Yeah, they're adding on to it a little bit.
Yeah.
The Fitzgerald are adding them. So all I want to clarify is that then a city park, quote unquote, the only way the city would let it remain that is on the residents for the past 35 plus years have maintained that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the residents out there should have a considerable amount of say as to what's going to be considered there in a street that's not wide for any party at all.
Sure.
That was my thought.
Yeah.
It's great. Back in.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And that may be, you know, that, like I said, it hasn't been set in stone. It's something that warrants further discussion, but, you know, if there is a dog park, you know, developed on that land, it may warrant, you know, some off-street parking considerations. So.
That seems like an honorable thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it. It's like the most.
Yeah.
So it's. Seems like a really one.
Yeah.
I would even think, you know. Yeah, I would think of all the other places before that. Yeah. For a dog park, I would go for a true children's dog park
there because we are going to have people turning over properties on that road.
Yeah,
The first I've heard of the dog park on the two of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that came in conversation at something in the
yeah, yep, it did, yeah.
That's probably where some of these ideas are getting voted through. I think it's getting everything to talk about.
Yeah, and this is all great feedback. I mean, we certainly don't want to put a recommendation out there that isn't in line with the majority of the community. So it sounds like we're getting a lot of feedback that that might not be the best place for a dog park. So, yeah. Yeah,
Great.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so if we did it, if we were to put a campground in the park right across the street towards the slough with some more empty lot that we can't use for basically anything, so that could be the dog park too. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was that at the last meeting, that was another possibility, so we could get that. next one.
Yeah.
yeah,
That'd be great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
I think we do have some things on our drive that have quite a few dogs and they walk them multiple times a day. And I could very well see them integrating, because it would be something that would be useful. So
Mhm.
I would hope that we could speak up to that.
Great. Any other feedback on the dog park? Okay. The third system-wide recommendation is looking at improving accessibility and ADA compliance. So a few items that fall under that category, looking at replacement of deficient sidewalks and trails, upgrades to restroom facilities, enhancement and upkeep of playground access and surfacing, and then improvements at the pool, specifically looking at things like the lift chair, locker room renovations, and then inclusion of an adaptive swing or other ADA compliant play equipment within the playground.
We did receive a new love chair too, so that's gonna be installed next spring.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we have it as 2023 on the plan, so. Checking things off the list.
Yeah. Is that stuff all in here or is this kind of mixed?
Yeah, it's kind of all in here. So at the beginning of the recommendation section, the system-wide recommendations, that's all in there. And then,
Hey, John, we are
Yep.
getting a ton of echo. Is that someone
Yeah.
else have this on somewhere? We can hear it echo. It's not, something changed since the audience started talking. There's an echo. It's really hard to hear.
okay.
For me, it's not echoing.
There's a couple.
It's Tina?
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
Speakers, so I
turned the
speakers up so the audience could hear.
Let me see.
Wendy's fault.
Yeah.
Good.
So when people on the computer or on Zoom are speaking and the mic projects it up to the speakers, there's so many issues, people in the audience.
You have no echo, Tina? Okay, I will
echo.
have to log off and log on then.
Yeah, okay. Let's see.
We're talking about ADA compliance. There's something
Yeah.
that's compliant and there's something that actually is acceptable.
Yeah.
Tony, you and I have had a conversation about that. ADA says which if they're not well regarded.
Mhm.
We've also talked about terrain, and we talked about the parks and our paths. Yeah, it's cheaper to do just the dirt path, but in the long run, it's actually cheaper if you just do it right from the beginning.
Yeah,
Because you're not.
Right.
Trying to tell that your dirt path is now bringing in mud, and I've got to now re-gravel it, and maybe that's something that we need to look at.
yeah, that's great feedback. One of the challenges with, smaller communities when it comes to parks and improving parks is just balancing that need or desire to make things, compliant and accessible, with budget and maintenance and things like that. So we want to, one of the goals is to increase accessibility. And so the All Abilities Playground at Schmidt Park, it's kind of going to be that playground that kind of really achieves all those goals. It provides this rubberized surfacing, it's accessible, it's got the ramps, it's got, all that stuff. But in terms of the other parks and playgrounds, the existing parks and playgrounds, looking at opportunities just to make sure that, those things do meet compliance requirements. Where there are opportunities to improve that beyond that level, take those opportunities, but just kind of balancing that budget piece with those desires is always a challenge.
Well, I think small group that's can be there on the college playground, realizing that building all-star. Not the budget friendly way to do that.
Mhm.
Thinking about real access to our existing facilities, is what we probably should be doing, starts with an playground.
Mhm.
We gotta kind of realize that we take $30,000 from the budget, we're not gonna get it, we're not gonna get assistance next year. So
Right.
it is really small budget decisions we make, and we're always like this. Being on council is something else, because our depression is that people just cannot stomach increases in taxes. But none of this happens about that, because there is not grant money out there to achieve all of the trends, and certainly not to meet what we have. I mean, Tony's been trying for years and years and years to improve the accessibility of existing bathrooms, and they're just not going to be funded. So we have to fund it through our regular source of revenue.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's just in the public, probably, I love these plans, it's like, I hope the public doesn't think this is happening anytime soon, because it's not gonna happen.
Right. Yeah, we have a slide later that talks about funding and timing and things. So,
Maybe we should have had one more poster down under the bridge that said, would you be in favor of increased taxes in order to achieve these goals?
It's really,
that's a great idea. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
it's always fun to think about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
There is no budgets. See the big grant, all for them, so.
Right. Right.
But it's hard for us to compete for funds. We're small, we're just trying to repair the places we have, and what we have, and it doesn't make for very expensive grant application.
Right.
So the sexier grant application is, oh, relocating all your athletic facility, we might have to do it to a particular, sort of level of, wow, or you're not headed.
Right.
Hadn't we also talked about special fundraising for some of these?
Yes.
Where we went with the
Yeah.
all of this. Yes, this community does great things. And
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's not fundraising.
Yeah.
And maybe even for improved students, parks, it should be really shouldn't be making. Hopefully someday maybe doing one special park, and people in our community right now, we have access to parks.
Yeah. Yeah. That was part of the athletic park relocation too, looking at, private opportunities for donations to kind of enhance that level of park finish. So. Last one, enhance and expand recreational trail system. I'll get into this one a little bit more here shortly, but generally looking to fill gaps in trail connectivity. And then kind of there's a number of recommendations here coming up that we'll talk through as far as the trail system. I didn't want to go through each individual park, so just pull this as an example within the plan. You could take a look at what specific recommendations have been identified for each park location, but within the plan for each park, there's pages like this that kind of identify short, mid, and long-term recommendations for the parks to help kind of prioritize when and how these improvements happen. So short would be 1 to 3 years, mid 3 to 7 years, and long is kind of identified as 7+ years. So, and those improvements for the park specific locations focus on kind of both the addition of amenities as well as ongoing maintenance items within the parks. And then trail and ped safety recommendations. So there's kind of 4, based on feedback from the steering committee, there's 4 priority trail connections identified, as well as we looked at opportunities to enhance pedestrian safety along Hiawatha to get folks to and from the school a little safer, and then looking at expanding sidewalk connectivity through the community. So looking at those four kind of priority trail connection items. The first one on the left is kind of in the proximity of the west of town mobile home park. Really looking at just helping to create a trail loop over on the west side of the town. Help strengthen that connection between Hiawatha and Fifth Grant, and connecting through the park system. Connection B on the right is within Isaac Walton Park itself. This was also identified within the recommendations for Isaac Walton. Just helping to connect the existing trail from Malone Park up to the existing trail that leads up to Beach Park across the slough. Trail connection C, this one's kind of interesting. The city owns a lot of property along this trail route, as well as public right of way. But generally this trail is looking to connect Marcoux Park up to Hiawatha and the rest of the park system. With Marcoux kind of identified as a potential campground site and potential dog park location. This would just really help to strengthen pedestrian connectivity to the other adjacent parks as well as to the downtown. So I think, really that would help make this a more attractive site for campers. People who can just hop on the trail, get to some of these other amenities more easily. And then lastly, trail connection D there in the area of River Drive South, looking to develop a trail connection from River Drive South over to Hiawatha. So basically just looking to help tie River Drive South and residents over there into the trail system along Hiawatha, help folks get to school a little safer and throughout the community a little safer.
So the city own that land, putting across?
They don't. So the thought with connection D is that, the city should look to implement that as in conjunction with any future development that occurs there. So this is really conceptual in nature, what we're showing here, but as land develops in this area, looking for opportunities to integrate a trail with the right of way through that new development. As I mentioned, looking at an enhanced crossing on Hiawatha, this was something that was really important to folks on the Safe Routes to School survey. Just with the level of traffic, the speeds of traffic down Hiawatha, the existing crossing really isn't deterring people or making people aware of that crossing effectively. So looking at doing an enhanced crossing, this is the picture on the top there is an RRFB. For folks who aren't familiar with that, it's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So essentially, you come up to it, you can push the button, the lights are flashing, it's making motorists aware that there's pedestrian activity happening there, and hopefully getting folks to stop traffic to slow down through that corridor.
Is there a projected cost for two of those?
So cost for so if you're looking at doing an RFP system, you have one on this side, one on this side. Our transportation group indicated a cost of about $30,000. Right. Yeah, you see them a lot. You see them quite often these days. They're very effective at getting motorists to stop.
Not only that, but it's that child that's crossing and pushing out and time changing it, just pause, stop, press a button, and then right now. Making sure it's safe to cross.
Yeah, you can have the vocal.
Wait.
Yeah.
At that point, heading away from the school, where you come off of Angelique, the kids who live there, River Drive, rest of, there's also that cross there before they can get to this. It's a dangerous spot.
Yeah.
Like you talking 12th Street, cutting over. to
Yeah,
12th.
yes, but at least from 12, you can get on that little sidewalk and access this, but if you're coming across from 12 from Angelique.
Oh.
You have to
No,
go on a
not
shoulder.
like with a 5 minute. I mean, like, within your minutes. I mean, thing, you know, so that's definitely something to consider too.
Okay.
Part of that stuff may be some that we can apply to the county with too,
Yeah,
because they got different types of funding, but
yeah. Yep, that's a good point. And then the last item with trails and pet safety is just looking at increasing sidewalk connectivity throughout the community. This I'd say is one of those projects that's really kind of opportunity driven again. It's something that you should look at in conjunction with any future roadway projects. So, you know, if they're going to be coming in and doing any roadway work along these corridors, looking at taking that opportunity to add sidewalk connectivity along here. I know specifically in the Safe Routes to School survey, 12th Street was identified as kind of one of those major connector that is currently lacking any pedestrian facilities. So, you know, looking at that as kind of one of those priority connections moving forward. And then just connecting up Hiawatha to Main Street, where there's some gaps in sidewalk connectivity there as well.
how do you bridge the gap between, because on probably 3 of those, we had a sidewalk plan in the 2013 street project, but people that live there came and threw a fit,
Yeah,
and so the city council took it out
okay,
because of the cost and because of them.
yeah,
So then, you know, you gotta look at coming in and doing it later on extra funding.
right,
Otherwise, you have to argue the fact that they're gonna go in and you're gonna have to deal with it, but people don't wanna clean the sidewalks in front of their house.
yep,
12th Street,
That's-
they're like, let's use the street, let's use the street. Why? not? It turned into a big battle and then now we're stuck on sidewalks.
yep, yeah. It's a challenge. Those are those things that people will speak out about, and you know, people are polarized. It's like a lot of people want sidewalks, some people don't. Like I said, some people don't want to maintain them, so that's just something that, you know, kind of has to be worked through and determined if it's a priority for the community and something that, you know, is necessary. But you know, based off feedback, it sounds like there are some connections that may be missing that folks would like to see.
We wanted to try to lead everything to the pool,
Yeah,
you know, and then
yeah,
that it just didn't happen because Washington comes right out by here, and then the Pierce and 12th Street, that was exactly what we had. Didn't fly.
yeah.
Would they okay with sidewalk in the city name?
That's a great question.
But say that it was required to have that. And then the city was maintaining for safety.
Probably go over a lot better.
And then what would the next pop-up be?
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna spill over. Right.
Sure.
What side do you put it on? Put it on this side, you put it on that side, two of them.
Yeah.
But it is a thorough thing. It's not like the other side streets. This is truly a major traffic. So there might be some state that too.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We do get law enforcement, our traffic control and safety side of the efforts. Yeah.
Okay. And then that last category of recommendations, the opportunity-driven projects. So a couple items that are identified within the category, the downtown riverfront plaza. This was something that was developed as part of the downtown streetscape plan. So, you know, hearing a lot about the importance of the riverfront, folks wanting to capitalize on that riverfront and really take that opportunity to develop it into an amenity. So this was a plan that was kind of developed out of that process. Looking at creating a separated trail underneath the bridge, extending that from over by the National Eagle Center to the west. And then opening up that space along the river for an additional gathering space, potential future playground opportunity, and then public restrooms, which is the restroom piece is something that we're looking to fund as part of the downtown streetscape or street reconstruction project. Everything else would be kind of a future opportunity project. And then the last one, mountain biking and hiking trails. So there was some feedback about interest in developing these types of facilities over in the area of the Coffee Mountain ski facility. Currently, the city doesn't own any land over there. No budget to really operate or maintain anything at this time. But so this would really be an opportunity driven project looking at, are there landowners over there who might be willing to provide some land to develop some trails through their property? Are there volunteer groups who would be willing to maintain these potential trails, things like that. And then financing. So this is a lot of text, but as we talked about, a lot of this, the city, there's a lot on the city's plate. There's not a lot of funding for park improvements. So looking to the public, looking to private donors, looking at grant opportunities, those are really what's going to drive a lot of these improvements. So a couple notes here. The athletic field is funded and slated for 2023. That project will address several of the key priorities within the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And it's been documented as a priority in a number of prior parks plans and city projects. Priority projects will be included in a 10-year capital plan. Every year the city has limited budget to expand on capital improvement items like streets, equipment, city buildings, and parks. Park projects made possible through matching grants to city investment. All abilities playground and dog park projects, looking for opportunities for public-private philanthropy, and looking at community groups to really take those projects and, look at kind of steering that ship and developing those projects into potential future amenities. Trail improvements included in the city's capital borrowing plan. These are kind of smaller projects that are really ideal for future grant applications. There's a lot of funding out there for trail connectivity and pedestrian safety improvements. Sidewalks addressed through street improvement projects. So as I mentioned, looking at those as kind of future opportunity projects to implement as street reconstruction occurs. And lastly, as we all know, this a master plan is really a guiding document. It's not something where everything within this plan is going to be accomplished, especially within 5, 10, 15 years. This is a document that we really like to see as kind of a living document where in future, as projects are completed, the plan can be amended as priorities shift, the plan can be updated. So certainly not anticipating that everything in this document is going to be, come to fruition, but it's a starting point for the community to kind of help to prioritize things. And then also as a funding tool, those funding agencies really like to see that the city is invested in this process, has thought long and hard about, what sorts of improvements they want to target. And that really helps to position you for some of those funding opportunities. So next steps. So we'll take the feedback that we received here today and any other feedback we receive here and make some final adjustments to the plan, get everything finalized, looking nice. We'll take the plan to City Council at the November 1st meeting for adoption. And then lastly, implement the plan. So, looking for those opportunities to implement projects from the plan, use it as a document to secure funding and kind of go after those different funding avenues and look at look for private donations and, talk to the community, talk to folks and, see what people's priorities are and you'd be surprised what, what people might be willing to to help with, so. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, thoughts. I know we have a few folks online too, so feel free to just speak up if you're online and have any questions on anything.
Well, Caroline wanted to this in person, which she's got 6 kids, but I said I would thank you. That's so tremendous for tremendous amount of work. I forgot how to return responses to the survey, even, which is really remarkable. I was listening in another meeting, and I just. This part accomplished, with those ideas and further. Thank you very much. Thanks to Chip for the funding for this. Tina.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tina. Thank you, Chip. Thank you.
So shout out to SHIP for the funding.
Our relationship. Any that, you know, we're a big deal for us is that we statewide health improvement partnership with the Minnesota Department of Health. So Tina Malone is our CHIP coordinator at Waterville County, and he's, you know, some of the walk bike advocacy ideas have been very, very much advanced because Tina's leadership they put together over and over again to talk about the trail dialogue and these trail connections. So all of that feeds into this.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all you do. Thanks
Same.
for all you're gonna do.
I would say
Anybody
the same
else?
thing about people here, coming up too, I mean, the groups are getting thinner and thinner. And people, you know, the volunteerism is not very much anymore, and it's hard to get our boards and commissions filled with people too, so. Having extra people here to provide input is big.
And I'll give a tiny little unplanned advertisement for what we'll launch later. We talk about funding. We were very privileged to get $50,000 from the Planning Foundation. The purpose of the grant is to develop more leadership capacity. Everybody in here has probably done multiple boards of committees. And you know how hard it is to get people. We're actually gonna keep doing that very good important work. So if you notice leadership potential in somebody that you're working with, or you're newly involved as a leader yourself, or you think that somebody that you volunteer with would have something to do work or anything in the community, we're looking to get people who organize their own group, partner with other entities, whether that be SHIP or the city or the library or whoever can help make the work happen. This never happens to a handful of individuals, and make application for funding. We have $50,000 to work with, and if you divide it up. Doesn't go real far, but it would probably planning level work. And as you can see, there's real professionalism needed to develop plans of this. So if you envision, let's say the all the ways playground ideas gets traction and there's need to develop an actual kind of conceptual design to further the fundraising efforts and figure out whether that person that really does work. Those kinds of costs can be reimbursed by the grant. So we kind of we hope to set the bar at a reasonable level and do a really good job with $50,000 and then apply getting those funds.
Jonathan,
Yes.
it's hard to, maybe if you repeat back, but just again, wanted to thank everyone and then just get reactions from people in the audience who are hearing the plan for the first time. Did we get it right? Are there things missing? Just looking for feedback from people that are hearing it for the first time. I will say that when I was at the pop-up event, there was generally very positive and enthusiastic interest in the boards that we had and in the discussion. So the feedback we got at the pop-up event was very positive. And again, I kept hearing about that dog park. So that got kind of back in the plan and back in the PowerPoint just due to some of the feedback that we got at the meeting.
Well, for me, seeing it for the first time, other than online, it just looks incredible. Really, really great work. It's gone into lots of thought and care, and it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's it's a long process. And like I mentioned at the beginning, it's really only as good as the work that you all do and the input that you've provided. So that's really what's directed this plan. So So thank you all.
Well, you guys have done a great job listening to what people have said and keep hearing over the course of meetings and sessions and listening, so it's done a lot of all. It is to be done.
Thank you.
I know we have talked about fundraising to accomplish some of the efforts for the new athletic field.
Yeah,
Is that going to be starting soon? I mean, I don't think that we want to delay on that too much longer. And to get that going and be very, very explicit about what that money is for. I think that's what people really want is upfront honesty,
yeah,
cost,
Yep.
and what we need from them.
yeah. Yeah, so that, oh, somebody gonna say something? Okay. Yeah, so that process will be starting here. We'll be kind of moving into final design of the park itself to kind of start doing the construction plans for that. And I know that some other staff are working on kind of some brochures that can help to facilitate the funding aspect of it. So some things that might be above and beyond what's going to be completed as part of the grant funded project. So there's some additional things, shade structure, for example, or things like that, lighting, enhanced lighting and things like that, that may be an opportunity for folks who have interest to, provide some additional funding. Yeah, 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 there is. But there will be some documentation that will be released that kind of identifies some of those opportunities and really kind of to help, garner interest and try to get some of those things funded.
And I think being that it's a facility for our kids, I think there are a lot of people that would be interested in contributing.
Yeah,
So next year, 2023, will the athletic field remain where it is now? Road, what's the, just considering the grant, we have to have the grant.
Has-
Is our grant scope accomplished in the next calendar?
Yeah, we gotta finish that public field by spring of 2024.
Yeah.
So basically, everything will happen in 2023, and there might be some wrap up items to just finalize seating or small stuff. But as far as the athletic field down there, some stuff is gonna get stripped and reused, maybe like the fencing,
Sure.
the scoreboards. The rest of it, I would assume we'll work on a plan for probably like get it out of there, clean it up. And maybe we'll, rough mow it for a couple of years until we find out from MnDOT, because for us to try and afford that, we need more money to do the road. And the MnDOT is relying on us to do the road and then kind of pay us some money back, but so what, unless there's more money that comes down the pipe through funding, why would we, as a city, take on all the money for the road when it's gonna benefit them? So that's kind of what we're at right now.
But we just want to get that park started.
Yeah, we got the grant.
Doesn't have this.
Yeah, we got the $300,000 grant.
Okay.
Towards
Yeah.
$1.25 million. So that's like the basic, and then you have in that.
Jonathan, can you pull up a picture of the athletic field graphic? It seems like there might be interest in seeing that.
yes,
Pamphlet, they're breaking
I
it down.
probably can. Let me,
If somebody wants to spend $10,000 or $15,000 on just irrigation for that, they can donate that amount of money towards it.
Okay.
Lighting, dugouts, there's different things. there. Yep. And that's what they're working on right now, is kind of breaking that down into numbers. And then once we have that, then we can, put it on Facebook, we can do mailings, we can do whatever we want, try and get it out there. We've already had some interest from VFW and Legion. We've already received $50,000 donation towards tennis court, possibly more coming. So, I mean, we haven't even done anything with it yet.
So in between, so as you're dismantling the present field.
Jonathan, I have the athletic field up if you'd like me to share it.
oh, absolutely, yeah. Trying to dig through my email here.
Elapsed, what would this like, school in between all of this?
I would think that we would get the basic stuff here and leave the fence until after fall season's over with,
Oh,
you know,
Nice.
that's what I pictured. You know, because the rough construction, they gotta put the base down, they gotta build the fields, and the fence would be the kind of sort of the last things.
so there won't be any time for the kids to miss out.
I'm hoping that.
Yeah, that's the.
This is
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I like it.
yeah.
Jonathan, you want to just point out the different amenities there and
Yeah. Yeah, so what we have is, so the proposed project includes 2 Little League fields. The outfield dimensions vary by field, so one's a little bit bigger than the other. But generally both will be for Little League. We have the relocated batting cages down here on the south side. Have a hockey rink that will also incorporate a basketball court. So you have a full court basketball court on one half of the hockey rink, and then on the other half that would be utilized for like roller hockey, things like that in the summer.
So there will be no general ice skating rink?
There's nowhere slated for a free skate area right now. Yep.
Can they use the hockey rink?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, it's not it's not strictly hockey, but it's for folks to go and ice skate. Yep.
okay.
But it can accommodate hockey.
I wanted to see how much room we come up with in between the fence on the field on the left and the hockey rink. And maybe if we even do something that is 1/3 of the size down there,
Mhm.
just for open skate,
Yeah.
we could make something.
Yeah, there's certainly. would have to be.
So other items that are included with the plan, so we have 2 pickleball courts and a tennis court. We have kind of expanded the parking lot area for both the pool and the park expansion area. We have a structure here that will incorporate concession stands, restroom, and warming house. And then these are the existing kind of storage building, well house. This is an existing structure here. Down here on this end, we have the skate park shown here, but there has been discussion about whether the skate park should go there or up here adjacent to the city hall building. So that's kind of still being determined.
It's at least a dozen kids that said to me, I'm so excited about that, how I feel, that don't own the skate park.
Okay,
That's pretty much the general consensus. It's
Yeah.
really like the center of town,
yeah,
and they rely on it. Picture.
oh, it's fantastic, yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's great feedback, and I would say that as part of the project being completed in 2023, the skate park is not currently part of that project. So in the short term, it will kind of stay in that area where it is. And there could be opportunities as that, if the road realignment does occur, to incorporate the skate park over in some green space over there. So,
It's real central.
Yeah. yep. Yeah, oh, it's a great spot. Yeah. That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head.
Kids swimming, the pool's full, it's like summer day, you got 2 long days going.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot.
Yeah, over. Yeah, you can park over
repeat the
here.
comment, John?
What's that?
Can you repeat the comment?
Oh, yeah, the question was about how much additional parking is going to be included with this project.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I don't have high walk out here. I mean, it's kind of hard to get used to, even when I. I've parked here a couple times, so-
yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Nobody knew.
and here's, back here. Probably be one side, that's, not a very wide street.
We are spoiled with the money. Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah, there's so much.
games and baseball games and other communities, people have to walk. And we'll just have to learn how to accept that.
Well, I'm just then thinking so, and you would have put some signs to say parking on the side of the street only.
Yeah.
And people in the trash can straight around my house.
I've never had that happen. The slipperies and all the other parking in front of our house. I've never had to see trash, so I can, but I hope that speaks well.
Yes, yep, that's good.
And see people.
Great. Any other questions, feedback? Anybody online have anything?
Just would love to hear from the any Parks Board members there, and if you don't mind repeating what they say.
Yeah,
Because
Yep.
they were really heavily involved in park-specific plans and the survey. But then the steering committee kind of took over from there.
yeah. Anybody?
I think for me, I was really excited to see that Schmidt has kind of been tagged for and all the buildings. So, you know, as we kind of talked about that in many different little sessions, it's nice to see that that place is maybe still gonna be a place.
Yeah, so feedback that about the all-inclusive playground at Schmidt Park, just liking the location and happy that it was identified for that location.
One other tiny note about that park, that's the one by. It should be nice if that felt robust. I don't know if you guys talked about that. It's a group, but just give it up.
We haven't even been using it for probably, it worked for the first couple of years and so the drain field that was designed and put in years ago doesn't work. So it fills up and then water runs out from under the fountain and it's a mess.
Even from the first day, it just so gosh.
Oh, you're talking about like Patton Park in Nick City where they got a big spray?
Well, I mean, just something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, whoever designed that back, I was streets that time, we made little valves, water come and run off. I mean, it was good for a while. And then they had to tone it down because the drain field was filling up, the water was all over. So now we got a choice, leave it or tear the whole thing apart and redo some type of recirculating or no different rate structure. And with our money in it. And
Yeah. So the feedback was, it would be nice for the fountain at Schmidt Park to have a little more bubbling than it does
Yeah,
currently.
that's a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
just feedback that it's a mechanical issue that would be fairly costly to address, so.
I know there's Darren and Michael over there, so
She's like a wizard about it.
Yeah. Right. I don't know how she's doing it, but she can see you.
One of the things that I am continually impressed on is the advocacy for bike trails and more connecting trails. I hear that a lot, and it's partially because of, you know, the work that I do people who want bike trails and tourists and stuff, so I hear that a lot. I don't sit on the committee with SHIP, but I do see read minutes and what they've talked about, what their agenda is, and it's continually impressive to me that that is a conversation and something will eventually bubble up. Things do bubble up and come to fruition from it, and I think that is there's a lot of potential to continue developing trails in the city and around the city. I particularly love that trails out in the bluffs has made it into here. And I know people talk about that, but like the city doesn't want land outside in the bluffs, so to make that
Mhm.
work is, there's more to it. But I think that is a really great conversation to have. Again, through my work, I deal with a lot of people who ask where we go hike. There are a lot of places we go hike, but for those of us that live here who don't always take the time to drive to Whitewater, Frontenac, so to have something that is 5 minutes from town, maybe straight up Coffee Mill, I think that would be a beautiful thing to serve not only visitors here, but us who live here more than just, living stuff. So I like that made it in here. I think that's an important thing to keep talking about.
Great.
And to piggyback on that, it would probably be good if the plan reflected a line if it doesn't already about access to public land, because we've heard from the Greater Minnesota Trails side of things, which would be our opportunity to get funding for trails, although it's one thing to build trails, another thing to kind of own it, keep it maintained, but nevertheless, if we're going for funding, it'd probably be good. We talked about that, is that the goal is to have access to public lands. Because there's not just the bluff side of things, there's a whole meter dunes.
Right.
It's a trail to Kellogg, it's not just a trail to Kellogg, it's a trail to everything beyond Kellogg as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we got the excitement from the Kellogg community, all the recreational years, that it's a connection, we just want to make a connection for all use. So I think our plan reflects that, and I guess it'll be more obvious that our community does want that, we'd like to invest in that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great point.
And we have software. So we've got a good kind of base application to work with, so that's not at all. I mean, we see opportunity to look for that, and we're gonna apply for it, because we've already done the work. Both with Bolton Maine and also with the city of Kellogg's.
Yeah. So just to summarize a couple of comments, we're impressed with the advocacy for bike and ped facilities within the city, like that aspect of the plan. And then like that the mountain bike hiking trails were included in the plan. And that it's, something that's starting to be talked about. And then lastly, important to note in the plan that connections to public land and, how that would benefit, the overall vision for the park and trails or the trail system and help with potential funding.
Any more comments on the Parks and Trails master plan document that anybody can think of? I'm sure you can email in. At any time, if you don't think of it today, it's
Yeah.
probably about it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody online for tuning in. And yeah, if you have any feedback, feel free to shoot me or myself or Caroline an email, and we'll be sure to take that into consideration and get things addressed in the plan accordingly. So
You think, which meeting it'll be at? No, probably not.
it's slated for November 1st.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. Caroline, is that still the
Yeah,
plan?
if you think you'll be ready by November 1st, that's the plan. Yep.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that offline, but I
So-
think we should be good for that.
Yep, and we're still taking written comments, and once again, the one written comment we got was about a dog park, so.
People love the dog park. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. We're gonna take donations at the door, so get your wallets.
Thank you. I'm gonna just end this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.